Urgent message came out from the IRS. Wanted to get you guys up to speed. Do not file your 2023 taxes yet. This is what the IRS is saying. Now, the IRS has advised taxpayers to hold off on filing their 2023 taxes. Now, if you happen to have received state level rebates or stimulus checks back in 2022, the IRS has now asked you to kindly wait to file in order for them to be able to provide further guidance on how they want to be able to handle these payments. There's likely over hundreds of different stimulus checks that have ultimately been distributed at the federal, state level, city level, the county level. So if you received any one of these types of stimulus payments, it is very important to wait for additional clarification from the IRS. Now, this recent announcement from the IRS, it has ultimately created some confusion for millions of Americans in about 22 different states who were planning to file their 2023 taxes. Now, the IRS is asking taxpayers to wait until they provide additional information, more information on how to properly handle state rebates or stimulus checks that they may have received in 2022, as they're still trying to figure out the best way to handle these payments. And I got a feeling that the American people are going to get screwed again on this one, if you ask me. But it is worth noting that there have been numerous stimulus checks that are distributed or have been distributed throughout the nation, not just in the federal level, but also from states, cities, and counties. Now, this has led to a rather complicated situation where different types of checks may be subject to different types of rules, tax rules, and regulations. And as a result, the IRS wants to ensure that all the taxpayers file their taxes correctly and accurately, which is why they're ultimately advising everybody who received a state level stimulus check or rebate check in 2022 to wait until further information has been provided. Now, by taking a moment to pause and wait for further clarification from the IRS, you can ultimately avoid any potential issues and problems, errors when you file your taxes, when your tax preparer is getting your taxes ready. Last thing you want to do is have your tax preparer do your taxes and then IRS makes some change because they didn't make a decision when you filed and they changed the rules down the line. And then all of a sudden you have to file an amendment to be in alignment with their new rule. Now, additionally, this will give the IRS enough time to provide clear and comprehensive guidance on how to handle these payments so that ultimately everybody can file their taxes with confidence and make sure that they're good. Now, the IRS has announced, please pause. This is what they're saying. They mentioned, this last week and they've released some additional updates from that point, but just coming out, they're saying that they still need to put a pause on this thing.
The IRS, in an unusual move, is urging millions of Americans to hold off on filing their tax returns for now. That is because the agency needs to figure out whether special payments sent to taxpayers in as many as 22 states last year are subject to federal income tax. This includes income or property tax rebates and inflation relief checks,
because they're not sure how they're going to be dealing with this going forward. Now, this is putting a lot of people in a tough spot. Like, number one, you got tax preparers trying to get everybody's taxes out. They're under the gun for the next couple of months. Everyone and their moms hitting them up, trying to get their taxes done. They're trying to get their tax rebate, even though your tax refund is likely to be smaller this year than it was last year. But there's a lot of stuff going on, and this is impacting a lot of people. A lot of people wait all year to get their tax refund check. And now even the IRS is basically screwing people by having this delay, being able to get their checks in their bank accounts. Now, I'm gonna give you guys all the details. And again, if you've not filed your taxes yet for the year for 2022, this is great. I probably wouldn't, especially if you have received a state level stimulus check. If you have not received a state level stimulus check, maybe it doesn't really matter too much for you. But we are going to be, awaiting additional information, and I'm gonna keep you guys posted on that. But let's go ahead and go into some of the details that we do have, and I'm gonna get you guys all, caught up on these details. But before we begin, please do your boy a favor, drop a like for the video. I totally appreciate that. And also for your daily dose of the truth, updates on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, the stock market, housing market updates, everything that's going on in Washington, D.C. That affects our lives, our families, and our bank accounts. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Totally appreciate that. Also, if you own a home, make sure your home is protected. Get your free home warranty quote. There is a link in the description down below this video. Now, guys, keep in mind, this is coming from the IRS, but always check with your tax preparer, check with your CPA, check with your tax advisor. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax advisor. Because you might be in a little bit of a mess if you file incorrectly. So, I'm just trying to make sure you guys are good and that you don't have problems with the IRS down the line. Last thing you want is that among all on top of all the other problems they have to deal with nowadays, right? But, let's go ahead and go into some of the details. And I want to let you guys know exactly what the IRS is saying as of right now. So it's the latest. This is the latest information that we have on the IRS. And the IRS is saying to millions of Americans in 22 different states to hold off on filing their taxes. Now, I want to share with you guys a list of all the states. We're going to be covering all the details that the IRS has just released so that you guys can know exactly where we stand. And this particular article says that the IRS is asking millions of taxpayers in 22 different states. This is like half of the United States already, right? Including California, Colorado, and Florida. And I don't know if this is a comprehensive list, meaning like, are they going to add more states in the next few days, weeks? It has yet to be announced, but 22 states, including Colorado, California, and Florida, who received tax rebates last year to hold off on their taxes. That's what they're saying. And the reason is the agency says that it's basically seeking to clarify that these tax rebates and special refunds are going to be considered taxable income or not. So, we expect to provide additional information and clarity as many states and taxpayers as possible as early as next week, according to the IRS. But this week, the IRS just said that they have not yet provided clarification, and they just don't know how they're going to handle this going forward. Now, about 16 million California residents, they received middle-class tax refund checks of $350. Eligible taxpayers received this amount of money last year, part of this relief package that was designed by the state to help residents cope with soaring inflation at a time when the state had, a budget surplus. So now it's kind of coming back to bite us in the rear end. So now at least 22 states authorized tax rebates last year, as a lot of states had excess tax revenues and they tried to hand it back to the people to help people out. Yeah. So now all that help is coming back to harm us, right? So the following states sent rebate checks to at least some of their taxpayers last year, according to the Tax Foundation. Got Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Virginia. So, there's a list of hundreds of different rebates out there. And ultimately, if you've received a rebate in the form of a tax rebate or a stimulus check from your state, you might want to hold off on filing your taxes, or at a minimum, chat with your CPA or tax preparer to find out if you should file now or hold off. Now, these one-time checks are now causing all sorts of problems during this particular tax season for millions of Americans, many of who rely on getting their tax refunds to they need them on time and to be able to make purchases, to pay off debt, to stay on top of bills, to make rent payments, to make property tax payments, to pay HOA fees, all sorts of reasons why people need their tax refund check in 2023 on time. Now, if we look back last year, the average tax refund for 2021's tax year, it was almost $3,200, $3,200. It's about a 14% increase from the previous year. Now, this amount is larger than a typical worker's paycheck. Sometimes people's refund checks are 2 or 3 times what their normal paycheck size is. Now, this uncertainty is basically, it's really, really unfair for a lot of people. And yet again, it's the taxpayers getting screwed. So if it's not the taxpayers' money going over to the Ukraine and other countries outside the United States, it's us getting our checks late, right? Now, this is just really unfair. It really is unfair. And, tax experts have long known that the taxability of state refund or state rebate payments would be an issue. So why would they wait until the tax season to discover this or at least attempt to address it, right? But IRS remained silent until February 3rd, at which point they said that, hey, we're going to get back to you. We're going to get back to the taxpayer soon. So they're saying that the IRS should have addressed this a long time ago. And of course, it's like, this is going to come down the pipeline. Why are you waiting till the last minute? And, now listen to this. File and amend or file and get penalized. So what the heck is that, guys? Like, taxpayers in these states who have already filed their tax returns because they're responsible tax-paying citizens, they could get screwed for filing their taxes on time. So, this is going to be a big mess, really, really big mess. Taxpayers in these states who have already filed their tax returns and reported their rebates as taxable may need to file amended tax returns, like we talked about earlier in the video, and exclude the money if the IRS decides that they are not taxable, which could ultimately kind of give them their money back in the form of a tax rebate. They're going to basically rebate the tax rebate that they claimed as income. It's craziness, right? So I don't know if you're using TurboTax, Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block, an independent CPA, but you might want to have a professional overlook your taxes and your tax return for this year just to make sure you're on the safe side. But yeah, I wanted to give you guys that quick update, and I also wanted to share with you guys that, ultimately giving taxpayers a choice between waiting to file their tax returns and receive their refunds or filing their returns that the IRS may later determine to be inaccurate. It's not acceptable. So, also adding to the confusion for taxpayers is that the federal government's tax rebates in the form of 3 stimulus checks during the pandemic, they were not considered taxable income by the IRS. And, as you all know, the federal level stimulus checks, the $1,200 check, $600 check, $1,400 stimulus checks, they're not considered taxable. They are a rebate, a refund, an economic impact payment. So, you didn't pay taxes on them. However, the state, the city, the county checks, those could be a different issue. But, I just want to share that information with you guys. Big things are always coming out seemingly on almost a daily basis. Now, one other thing that the agency mentioned is the agency started accepting returns for this year's tax season on January 23rd. And one taxpayer actually wrote on Twitter saying that, they tried to sit down and do their taxes, but it turns out that the IRS hasn't decided yet if California's middle class tax relief payments are taxable or not. So it's unbelievable, guys. It's unbelievable. These, you think that your elected officials would be taking care of us, but hey, it's another story. Now, if you're in need of your daily dose of the truth when it comes to the state of our economy, Social Security, government subsidies, global conflicts, and whatever the heck is going on in Washington, D.C., definitely consider subscribing to the channel. And also drop a like for the video. Some of my videos have been getting suppressed lately. That definitely helps us get quality, important information out to the people. But otherwise, please be safe out there, be kind to one another, and I'll see you guys on the next video.